In this section, we'll be solving proportions. Before we begin to solve proportions and word problems, it's important to understand some characteristics of proportions. First of all, a proportion is two ratios set equal to each other. And a ratio can also be considered a quotient, which is a fraction. What makes these two ratios actually a proportion is the fact that they are equal to each other. If you cross multiply, you'll see that 1 times 8 gives you 8, and 2 times 4 gives you 8. That means that these two ratios are in proportion with each other. We can use that same concept of cross multiplying in order to help us find what a variable one in the proportion. So here we'll still cross multiply, and we'll get 1 times 8, which is 8, and 2 times x, which is 2x. Our job is to find what does this numerator need to be in order for our ratios to be in proportion with each other. When we cross multiply and set up our equation and actually solve for x, we'll see that x equals 4. And as you can see in the problem we first did, the numerator was 4. That's what made our two ratios equal proportion. So the only way 1/2 can be equal to x over 8 is if x is actually 4. Now let's use this concept to solve word problem proportions. In this problem, it says, identify the proportion listed below that solves this problem. A car can travel 145 miles on 16 gallons. Now that is your first ratio. 5 miles can travel 145 miles on 16 gallons. How far can the car travel on 36 gallons? Now when setting up the proportion, it's important to put the units in the same place. Since I already have 16 gallons in the denominator, I'm going to place 36 gallons in the denominator in the second ratio. Now what we're looking for is how far the car can travel, which is actually the miles. Now, in order to solve this proportion, we're going to use cross multiplication in order to find out what x will be. Well, 16 times x gives us 16x, and 145 times 36 gives us 5,220. Again, we want to solve for x. So in order to solve for x, we need to divide by 16 on both sides. That will give us x equals 326.25 miles. So that means we can, in a quarter, 326 and a quarter miles on 36 gallons of gas. Let's look at one more problem. In this problem, it says, identify the proportion listed below that solves this problem. The scale on a road map uses 3 inches to represent 110 miles. Again, this is your first ratio. 3 inches represents 110 miles. Let's see what the second ratio is. If two cities are 11 inches apart on the map, how many miles apart are the two cities? Again, it's important to make sure you place this information in the right place. Since I have the distance, the inches in the numerator in the first ratio, I want to make sure I put the distance in inches in the numerator in the second ratio also. Since I'm looking for how many miles, that's what I'm going to represent with a variable until I can solve. Now that I've actually set up the proportion, we can cross multiply to find out how many miles is represented by 11 inches on the map. 11 times 110 is 1,210. 3 times x equals 3x. Now again, to solve for x, I need to divide by 3. X equals 403 and 33. This is actually a repeating decimal. So that means that in this map, 11 inches represents 403.33 miles.